Welcome to this Aztlander presentation, Forgotten Journals from a Lost City, Jean-Frédéric Waldeck's Palenque Field Diaries, an early testimony of Maya art, architecture, and writing. And this is part 2 with Carl D. Callaway, art historian and archaeologist. Carl's part is the insights gained in Palenque iconography and epigraphy, and the Q&A from parts 1 and 2. Enjoy!
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing a part of your evening with us. And we're really excited to share with you some new research about an old topic and an old explorer. But first, we'd like to thank Johann Begel and myself and Danielle. We all want to thank Jim and Michael for giving us the opportunity to present new findings on the Waldeck Palenque diaries, which have never really fully been translated or studied from an archaeological or historical perspective. After nearly 200 years of sitting in the dustbin of history, the Waldeck diaries are now examined in the light of 21st century scholarship, and they have much to tell us about a classic Maya city whose magnificent art, architecture, and inscriptions established Maya archaeology as a new discipline of study. Let's see, let me progress here. So I first learned about Jean-Frédéric Waldeck's journals and drawings in 2008 through my academic advisor and mentor, Dr. Peter Mathews, who spent decades collecting the artist's diaries, letters, and illustrations. As we pored over page after page of unpublished drawings, watercolors, and paintings, I wondered why 20th century scholars so easily dismissed the Waldeck drawings, letters, and diaries, right? And this is this important corpus from an explorer who investigated every corner of the then known Palenque ruins. The answer lay in a lack of credibility. Waldeck's overactive imagination and intellectual and artistic bias often clouded his perceptions, affecting his work. Equally true, however, is that his early sketches of monuments and watercolors of local fauna and flora displayed a high level of accuracy and were an improvement over the clumsy drawings produced by early explorers. So again, I'm just showing you just page after page after page. We literally have hundreds of drawings of artifacts, architecture, inscriptions. It really is a boon of information here. But you can see here that Waldeck wasn't just interested in the art and architecture. He was also documenting the plants, the insects, the animals. He was also documenting local customs and fashions of the time as well. And you can see here in this instance, his brush and his pen are quite accurate. But Waldeck's eccentric nature was also partly to blame. He was a true showman with a vain and invented past, an artist prone to pursuing outlandish theories, and by any sane assessment, a colonial racist so denigrating of his fellow man that his vulgar remarks make today's educated reader recoil in disgust. It was clear that to fully understand the triumphs and failures of the Waldeck drawings, we needed to delve deeply into his diaries and correspondence, sketch out our own profile of the artist, and trace the influences and points of view that guided each work. Now, I hope many of you had a chance to read our article in the Aztlander. That will give you a much more broader view of the corpus of documents and drawings, and the many exciting investigations that we've been pursuing, and that we've opened up to other art historians and archaeologists and linguists. It's all very, very exciting. But what I want to share with you tonight is a little slice of that research. And I want to share with you some of the iconographic and epigraphic discoveries we've made in our reassessment of Waldeck's work. And this is just, again, a small slice of what we've discovered. So without further ado, let's get to it. Let me back up here a little bit. And this is the title page of one of Waldeck's drawings. This is volume 26. We only have one actual field pocket diary from Palenque, and that's volume 26. Volume 26 is implying that there are another 25 volumes that were recorded, but were never saved, which is an incredible shame. But when you open up this pocket field diary, it is just chock-a-block full of everything that you would want in a field diary. You've got you've got a page showing a beautiful drawings of a quetzal bird. He's also has sketches of the Chiapan geography. He made a trip over the mountains to the sister city of Tonina, and he's recording the lengths of travel and also the heights of the mountains and the terrain, and drawing these topographical maps. He has an article here, an article that is recounting the recent discoveries of Rafinesque, one of his rivals. Of course, we know Rafinesque as the French investigator who deciphered the very first Maya hieroglyphs, the bars and dots used in the Dresden Codex. And up here in the right, he has made, this is his first impression of a mask of Kawil. This is a mask that is on the eastern facade of the Temple of the Sun. And I must say, he's recorded the iconography spot on here. Then there are pages and pages and pages of butterfly wings. He talks about when he enters in to the lower flatlands before he climbs up the mountain to the city. It's a place of marshes and grasslands, and it's filled with just thousands and thousands of butterflies. Which he also collected, and he collected insects and plants, and he brought these home, or he stored these on site. Unfortunately, these floral and faunal collections were all but lost, and I'll explain a little bit how here in a little bit. He's also recording. He's looking for sources to explain these cities. So he's any chance he gets to record a history of Mexico, eyewitness accounts, things of this nature. He is writing it down in his notebooks. So what's really, really unique about Waldeck is what makes him so different from his other colonials is he's really, really interested at what he's looking at. And he draws anything that is of interest to him. I mean, everything from people to landscapes to animals to plants to artifacts. And as this quote describes, Waldeck is really one of the first artists, if not the first artist, to recognize that Maya art was on the same level of classic Greek art and Roman art. Okay, this was not a city built by savages or barbarians, but this is art and architecture that is equal to that of ancient Rome, ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, and ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Babylon. Oh, and so as you go through his watercolors and his field sketches and his paintings, you're looking for these little Easter eggs, right? I mean, in this example here, we have the gallery of House A and the main doorway here. And he makes note of two things. We have these ancestor cartouches along the wall, which he is showing still has remnants of portraiture. And in fact, he also mentions that the locals had thought that some of these were portraits of women, probably due to the dress. Also, he has very classical, neoclassical portraits of workmen and also of women as well. And he'll add in an occasional artifact for scale. And you can see here that this huge stucco head that was picked up off the ground, it's given some measure or scale, but unfortunately, he does not give us a scale or tell us where he has found both of these artifacts here. Now, Waldeck is unique because he spent over a year, I think it's 13 months, at the site. And the last 3.5 months, he lived on site. He had constructed a home, a kitchen, as well as a chicken coop here at the base of the Temple of the Cross. And what he would do, he explains that when he would find an artifact or something of interest, he would take it and he would put it out in the solar, or he would, for safekeeping, he would put it in the foundation, around inside the foundation of the house. And so the house also became his bodega, which he also organized and housed, jars, hundreds of jars of insects and plants as well. So what he did is he picked up all of these miscellaneous artifacts and brought them to the house. Now, unfortunately, the house was burnt down by Santa Anna's goons. Waldeck had ultimately made too many enemies of locals. We'll explain that a little bit later. And ultimately, government officials came in to possess all of the artifacts that he had collected, as well as all of his drawings. He absconded and he escaped just in time. But shortly after the escape, the government officials and the army came in and burnt everything down to the ground. But what's really exciting here is we have, again, drawings of these stucco glyphs that we have the ability to look at and possibly place back into various buildings and inscriptions. And again, here's just a wonderful example of a lot of the hyena figurines and masks. Of course, he has a crocodilian head here, and the center artifact is probably a rendition of the face of the jaguar god of the underworld. It's part of one of the terracotta incensarios found at Palenque. Now, Waldeck is not only finding these artifacts on site, locals are bringing him artifacts to actually draw. And And so anytime he has a chance to draw something, he does. It also rains and incredibly a lot. When he first got there, it rains for months and months and months. And so these artifacts gave him something to do while he was waiting out of the rain itself. And again, here's more miscellaneous. I mean, none of these have ever been cataloged or analyzed, or, you know, these could be in private or museum collections, right? And I have this, he could have picked these small figurines and terracottas up from Palenque, but I just generally label them Chiapas artifacts. Here is another incensario that you have here, one of these terracotta incensarios that looks to be the main central deity, looks to be an aspect of the sun god. Down here to the left, we have the Te god, the god of a primordial tree. Over here on the lower right, we have a moon goddess with a seated rabbit in her lap, which, of course, you know, is a very popular motif from classic Maya architecture. Up above here in the center, you have this wonderful hyena figurine that is an ancestor being born out of a blossom, a flower blossom. And again, these have never really been analyzed or documented in the past. So here's a few more hieroglyphs that he picked up on site. With a little bit of investigation, we've been able to place a few of these stuccos. And I want to just concentrate on the top row here. So if you look at House A, Pier A, the first glyph block here of interest, it actually is a beautiful rendition of the 819 day count verb. And of course, this hieroglyphic block is missing on House A, Pier A, at glyph block C1. And I would say that it's almost a perfect fit for the passage here. Of course, we don't know, since we don't have any scale here to the glyph block. We really can't fit it into that the shadow of its remnant there, so we can't quite be sure. Then we have another glyph block here, stucco glyph block, where we have potentially the glyph from the lunar series. It's either glyph 10A or C, quite possibly. If any of you are interested in the lunar series and think that you can fit this in, please do contact me and we'll work on it together. One of the glyph blocks I think that is a real win for placement is here on the Palace House A, medallion number 5. It's a very, very strange hieroglyph, and it's like a tongue coming out of the maw of one of the serpents in the corner of the cartouche, and it has a jewel at one tip here. And I think, as you can see, it's such an unusual glyph that I think here that it's a really great match. So these are the neat little sort of Easter eggs and things that we find that we can fit back into the architecture. So as you can see right away, you know, it's a real mistake for scholars to completely dismiss any of Waldeck's early Palenque drawings as inaccurate or unprofessional, especially those sculptures and inscriptions that were later eroded or lost. His illustrations, especially the early field sketches, you know, his first impressions, usually have a high degree of accuracy when the object of study was in a good state of preservation, as in this example of the sanctuary jam panel from the Temple of the Cross here. This is a very tiny drawing. I think it's only about the width of my hand, but the detail is absolutely exquisite. So well done, Mr. Waldeck. Oops. Here are both of these these are the outer jambs of the sanctuary inside the Temple of the Cross. These actually, both of these panels had been, by the time Waldeck got there, had been looted and were in the house of a prominent local. By the time Stephens and Catherwoods got there, these two panels were actually embedded in the wall of the local church. So, but however, when the objects were in an eroded state, the artist's brush tended to fill in the missing pieces with more biased and imaginative detail or reconstructions, as this example of the Pythian headdress and the hand postures of the seated figure on the bas relief. To the trained eye familiar with Palenque iconography and inscriptions, Waldeck's neoclassical inventions and flourishes are so blatant and obvious that their exaggerated elements and classical nuances can easily be separated from his more sober lines and renderings, allowing the researcher to see surviving iconographic and epigraphic elements within monuments that were later lost by erosion. And so here on the bas relief, everything pretty much, I would say, from the chest up is quite interpretive, okay? But from the waist down, we have a pretty good, accurate line and description. Now, everybody is looting from the site, and Waldeck actually also looted from the site. In fact, he did it in the name, he said, of science, in the sense that I think he took one of the lower feet here of the throne, and he was going to package it for a museum display. Okay. So again, as we compare his filled sketches with his later lithographs, we can easily segregate that more sober line from the more imaginative line. But really, as we'll see, you always need to compare and contrast Waldeck's work with comparative sketches made by other explorers, as well as later photographs. Now, we do have to take, speaking of imagination, we do have to talk about the elephant in the room, because what Waldeck is most famous for is the elephants, portraits of elephants that he drew at Palenque. Why was he so avidly insistent that elephants were in the architecture here? And I also have to say that his elephant drawings only add up to about 6 or 7 drawings. He's made over 200 drawings of the site. 6 or 7 of those display these elephants. Well, one of the reasons why he was so adamant that he thought that he saw elephants in the architecture, in that really flowing, organic line of Maya art and sculpture, was that about 20 years prior to Waldeck traveling to Palenque, there was a major discovery of elephants in central Mexico. And of course, they didn't know at the time that these elephant tusks and bones were of Pleistocene mammoths. Modern geology hadn't even been birthed yet. That would happen in the 1860s with Charles Lyell, I believe. Or was it George Lyell? Well, anyways, so this was evidence. This was proof positive. They had the bones. This was proof positive that elephants were in the Americas. And of course, it was a natural assumption to make that those elephants must have come from the old world, and they were brought over by potentially ancient Hindus, right? Are people migrating from the old world, right? So there was early on in my archaeology, diffusionist histories abounded. There are everybody from ancient Egyptians, lost tribes of Israel, ancient Babylonians, all coming over and visiting the Maya Riviera in the remote past. So, of course, when Waldeck is looking at a glyph that has very large noses, especially, features of chalk or kawil, he will imaginatively reconstruct that piece of architecture or glyphic block into the head of an elephant. And of course, he's deeply, deeply chastised by 20th century scholars, especially Thompson, who absolutely just rakes him over the coals. Thompson publishes an early article at the beginning of the 20th century, and after that, there's just this huge dog pile, right? No one looks at his successes or his more accurate drawings. They just focus on his errors and hence just throw everything he did into the dustbin of history. Now you can see here from the Temple of the Cross, the right panel here. This is actually an imaginary panel, which I'll describe why in a bit. And he's got portraits of elephants, and he even throws in a little bit of cuneiform in there, just to hint at that Babylonian connection, right? So one of the things that people don't know about is Waldeck was really the rescuer of the Temple of the Cross main sanctuary panel. And when Waldeck got on site, he was absolutely horrified to see that everybody from locals and anybody who visited the site were taking mementos away, or they were full-scale looting. When Waldeck got to the site, locals had already pried this central panel, sanctuary panel of the Temple of the Cross away, and they had brought it as far as a riverbank, the stream bank nearby. And Waldeck immediately started a huge letter writing campaign, to which, let me see if I can back up here, to which he wrote the governor, the local alcalde, anybody who mattered or had any influence to get the looting stopped. And it did stop for a while he was there. But of course, this made him a lot of enemies. And he really began to think of himself as the guardian of the site, and in his attempts to record this art for posterity. Here's a wonderful set of sketches, field sketches of the basic architecture of the front facade and the side of the Temple of the Cross. Okay, really, really detailed notes here on the cornices and the different levels of architecture represented here. Now, this is a huge, his drawings are just a huge improvement by previous drawings by Armendariz and Castaneda. I just want you to compare here. We have Armendariz' drawings from 1787 from the Del Rio expedition, as opposed to Waldeck's drawings. You can just see the clarity of line and the exact scaling of the figures. But we do have, and upon closer inspection, we have to be wary, right? We always have to compare these drawings with later drawings as well as with photographs. And when we find out very, very quickly, we see that the right panel is actually just imaginary. Okay, this is a false inscription. Now, Waldeck in his diaries boasts that, Stevens and Catherwood, when they came to the site a few years later, they totally missed the rice panel, but I am the one who had actually recorded it in situ. That was balderdash, because, again, when Waldeck got to the site, the main panel, the central panel had already been dislodged. The left panel was left intact, but this right panel was dislodged. It was broken up, and it was sold to the Americans, and ultimately would make it into the Smithsonian Museum. the Smithsonian Museum would purchase it. And there it was for decades. And ultimately, the Smithsonian did the right thing, and they donated the panel back to Mexico. Now, all three of these panels are in the Mexico City Museum of Anthropology today. Okay, this is actually the first photograph of that central panel left by the riverbank as Waldeck had found it. One of the things that Waldeck did that was really, really important, after he finished drawing a monument, he would bury it or turn it face down. So he was very, very cognizant of the erosion, not only the looting, but the erosion of the monuments. And thank goodness he did this, because we would potentially lost one of the most famous icons and images of classic Maya art and philosophy, and which is the sacred ceiba tree of the ancient Maya. So I want to tell you about another really big win here. So Waldeck, there was a festival in the colonial city of Palenque, village, I should say. And of course, they brought out all the musicians, and he's really fascinated by, and he draws with great clarity and detail the various instruments. And in his diaries, he actually has descriptions of these instruments, and he's asked, how were they made, and he's really, really fascinated by this. But here's Waldeck. He's front and central. He's visiting one of one of his well-to-do neighbors, and he has his sketch pad with him, right? And the reason he has his sketch pad, because if you look really closely, he's actually sketching the threshold. Now, he's told that this threshold was dug out of a temple in Palenque, and they've been treading on it for 50 years, right? And so, yeah, it's basically been a doormat for 50 years. So he has taken his drafting board and papers, and during this fiesta, of course, he's the center of attention, and he's drawing this great stone on the threshold. Now, upon closer inspection, you see that this is actually the south sanctuary jamb panel from the Temple of the Sun. And so here we have, again, from his painting, showing the threshold on the left, and then his actual drawing on the right here. Now, now, if you compare this drawing with a modern drawing of the same by Merle Green Robertson, you see that Waldeck's drawing is not lacking in detail. I mean, he's drawing even the same stress fractures in the stone as does Merle Green in 1983. What I want you to focus your attention is on the border of this panel, this left-hand border, because it can serve some really important details. As David Stewart has pointed out, these borders around these sanctuary panels actually encode the name of the building as the 9 Ak Weets Kenich Pas Kab. And when you take a closer look at Waldeck's rendition of this border, you can see various elements of the temple name in the band here, with some really neat little additions. We have the T24 mirror sign next to what looks to be a corn cob, okay? And we have also next to the Pas Kab, possibly Pas Kab tune, we have this tri-lobed floral sign. So these are elements that were later lost but are conserved in Waldeck's drawing, and I think they are quite accurate. One of the reasons why I think his drawings of the Temple of the Sun are accurate, because basically, again, he had time, and he would get up. He spent 3.5 months at the site, living on site, and he talks about getting up every morning, looking for those optimum light conditions as he drew every element of the Temple of the Sun. So, hence why his rendition of the art and architecture on that building is so precise. Now, you can see his method here, where he will basically chart out and graph out the lines. Waldeck was trained as a studio artist. So when he draws a panel, he'll put it almost like in an art studio with raking light, so have a light source here. He has a light source in the upper left-hand corner, and he gives you nice defined shadows, as if he were drawing a piece of sculpture in a studio here. So we will return here, or shall I? Yeah, okay, no, let's talk a little bit more about the oval tablet. Now, the oval tablet has been photographed and drawn by almost every visitor to Palenque. But of course, being that Waldeck is visiting the site in 1832-33, he's able to see tiny, tiny little elements that quickly got eroded or vandalized over time. And I want to point out a couple of those elements. You can see here from his drawing of the inscription on the left that he does a really good rendition of the title being given to the young Pakal, who's ascending to the throne here, as the Yashun Yop Ishim. So, and then you can almost guess from his drawing that the next glyph block holds Pakal's name with the typical Pakal shield, Hana Pakal shield. And the last glyph just has the elements of the emblem glyph of Palenque here. So one of the things that Waldeck records that no one records after him are these nasal bridges. So he's really fascinated by this because he knows of other traditions where on the bridge of the nose, they create an artificial bridge, right? And for the Maya, this artificial bridge, as we'll see, is like the crown jewel. It's like the crowning jewel. And it makes this artificial line from the tip of the nose to the top of the head. And that's like in kind to the profile of the maize god, which Maya nobility sought to emulate. So I'll just read you what he has here. He says, in front of the queen, he thought Pakal was a woman. He said, in front of the queen, a kneeling figure presents her hat with large pearls, top feathers. This figure has Ethiopian features and a rich headdress. But what is surprising is to see an ornament falling from her forehead over her nose, a custom which we have no other example except among the Jews. So of course, he's always relating this iconography and explaining it in terms of classical or old world history or archaeology. But as I was pondering if, did Waldeck get this right? It just so happened at Palenque, there was found one of these nose bridges in beautiful, beautiful condition here. And, carved in scrimshaw, right? I'd really like to know what this bone is made of, or if it's human, did this come from an ancestor or an animal? And, but this was really, really exciting because it shows tangible proof that the Maya were carving and using these nose bridges, right? So when you do a really close examination of the oval tablet, if you look here on the left at Merle Green's photo, you can see, yowza, there it is. Very, very clearly delineated as Waldeck drew it. we have the nose bridge on Pacal's mother here. Now, of course, Waldeck gives it a more of a kind of a feathered appearance that could have been there. We don't know, but it's lost due to erosion. By the time Sheely and Green Robertson draw the oval tablet, that evidence and that line, it's not only almost lost, but they don't see it. See, you just think it's a scratch in the wrong light. You just think it's a scratch in the stucco. And if you're not looking for it, you're not going to see it. So they draw the noses of Pacal's mother and Pacal very, very large, right? And this just isn't the case. The reason they're large is because they have nose bridges. Now, if you and again, here is a cast of the oval tablet, and you can see they're just as plain as day. That the queen here is wearing this crown jewel of the nose bridge. And then very, I was just looking at this last night, and if you compare Pacal's portrait, remember he's only about 12 years old here when he assumes the throne. You can see in his stucco mask of the youthful Pacal that this is a stucco mask that was in his mortuary tomb, placed in his mortuary tomb. You can see the nose bridge. You can see the line of the nose bridge as clear as day. In fact, it's covering a much larger portion of the nose, right? But here we have two great examples that's completely validating Waldeck's attention to detail. Okay, another piece of Palenque House E art and architecture I want to focus on. Of course, the oval tablet is in House E and is that central panel. Above the oval tablet was once a painted inscription. And Maudsley was the first one to photograph this inscription in situ. But now we know it's actually Waldeck, decades earlier, was the first one to note and draw this inscription. This was a very, very big surprise. But I just want you to take note here that when Maudsley saw the inscription, and as he was photographing it, he couldn't get a good photograph of it because it was covered over with a very thin layer of almost like translucent plaster. So he took the tip of his hammer, a hammer handle, and he kind of knocked along the inscription to knock off that layer of translucent plaster so he could get this photograph. Of course, as soon as he did this, it immediately started to erode, right? Paul Johnson and I have been working on this for a series of decades now, and we're about to publish, hopefully publish our final report on the House E painted text. But in 2015, we used photographs from the Linda Sheely archive, as well as the Maudsley archive in the British Museum. We created this wonderful composite, found the marriage line between the two, created this wonderful composite, and digitally restored this painted text back into the House E throne room above the oval tablet, where it originally existed. Today, it's almost completely gone. And we also took other elements such as the Del Rio throne and inserted that back into the throne room as well. Here's all three of those elements drawn by Merle Green. And again, I'm just pointing the position of the painted text, which is on the vault spring, just below the vault spring and above the oval tablet here. Now, this painted inscription is really, really, really important because when you look at its center line, you see that there's a lot of intent here. The painted inscription actually relates to the grandson of Pacal, Acalmo Nob III, and his accession. And he wants to link his accession directly with that of his famous grandfather and his uncles. And so he centers the inscription right along the center line of the oval tablet and the center line of the Del Rio throne here. And you can see recorded on each of these areas, you have the accession of a Kalmonab. He connects his accession to the accession of the triad progenitor, a sort of aspect of the maize god, thousands of years prior, shortly after the birth of the universe. And then he also connects it over 180,000 years into the deep past to a primordial god. But all in all, what he's doing is he's making this connection and correlation with ancestral gods, as well as his own family. Okay, I just want to give you just a little bit closer look here at Maudslay's photograph and how much detail still exists from these photographs. And we can pretty much reconstruct easily about, I would say, 60% of the inscription. Okay, and this is just showing you that massive distance number that reaches back to a very important stated long count in deep time, over 180,000 years into the past from the accession of the triad progenitor. So big leap in time. Okay, now this is Annie Hunter's drawing, the artist that Maudsley hired to draw Maya sculpture. And you can, and this is, we're still in the House E throne room. And this is the wonderful stuccoed star band that is above the north door. And you can see that it centers around above the north door, and then it turns and runs down either wall of the House E throne room. Okay, so, and this is also along the same vault spring of the painted inscription. So when Waldeck drew this wonderful stucco band, what he noted was an element of that painted text that we've been talking about on the right and the painted frieze on the left. Now, the painted inscription does not abut up to this stucco star band, but he remembered, yeah, you know, it was on the same level of that vault spring. So what he did is he made a very quick sketch. He made a sketch of the painted inscription, and he also made a sketch of the this painted frieze, which we'll talk about here. Now, here I'm showing you an up close version of Waldeck's painted inscription and a corresponding photograph from Maudsley made in about 1891. Now you can see that Waldeck's sketch is really garbled, and one of the reasons it's garbled is because it's still covered over by that thin layer of film and plaster, which Maudsley would later knock away. But one of the things that got me really excited when I saw this was this band of bars and dots along the base of the inscription. I saw evidence of these bars and dots. You can see just barely in the Maudsley photograph. I saw evidence of these bars and dots in the Maudsley photos, but I couldn't quite validate that they were there. But Waldeck is clearly showing bars and dots on the inscription. In fact, he's so he gives a full description of this painted description. It's confused because he claims that these bars and dots are similar to the bars and dots that are on the pages of the Dresden Codex. Now, he gets that cue from Rafinesque, you know, one of his main intellectual rivals, because shortly before he went to Palenque, Rafinesque had made this major decipherment of Maya bars and dots. And so kind of on those coattails, but not mentioning him, Waldeck wants to claim that the bars and dots in the painted text are similar to the bars and dots and numbers found in the Dresden Codex. And then he quickly makes the further claim that that must be proof that the Dresden Codex came from Palenque. Okay, which is of course we know is not true, but at the time he wanted to make this claim of their sort of equivalent origins, right? Now we don't know what this count of bars and dots are counting to. It's a short count. No number seems to be over 13. So it could be a Trecena count. It could be a count of, who knows, successive rulers. It could be a count of soaking dates. We don't know. But it's very important to note that this smaller count is directly under this much larger count. So we have two counts, corresponding counts that are running parallel to one another. Okay, and then Waldeck also makes a point of this painted frieze, and Zahler would come and visit Palenque later in about 1911 with his wife, and he would also document this frieze that once circled probably circled the entire room. And and Zahler identifies these as abstract eyes relating to stars, similar to abstract eyes and stars that are found on Aztec architecture. And I think he's absolutely right. So what this frieze is doing is it's elevating the building to a celestial level. This is where the powers of the sky and earth meet, right? They're really signifying that this is a place of celestial presence and ancestry. And as Stuart and Stuart have said, you know, House E acts as the symbolic heart of the palace itself. And still, on the first archway that leads down into the subterranean, Waldeck had he drew the existing iconography on two of the archways here. This one, oops, for some reason it didn't come through. Well, what's really important here is that what you have is sort of have a double arch. You have a sort of a cosmic Cayman above and sort of an earth Cayman below, split in two halves. And in the center, you have a rising sun. And Waldeck called this the astronomical arch. And I think he alludes to astronomy because he must have figured that this solar sign is like in kind to the sun. And it is related to astronomy because it is showing the sun sort of rising out of or going into the sort of the cracked body of this Cayman. But what's really, really important is an element that he drew in the eye of this sort of kneeling figure. This is a crouching figure on the left. This is a crouching deer, and the manner in which he drew the eye, he put a human footprint, the sole of a human print. He just drew it as the way he saw it, but it's really, 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 really important because we know this to be a sacrificial deer related to the sun god. So it helps us identify the gods and the ritual action here. So this deer actually has a footprint in its eye, or the sole of a foot across his two eyes, sort of blinding him. So it's a very strange combination, but we know that this is a sacrificial deer relating directly to the sun god. So we have the sun god on the right and the sacrificial deer on the left. These details really matter, and Waldeck in his field sketch here records it. Now, another really great win for Waldeck is the alfardes of captives on the House C East Court West Staircase. This is the staircase that has the hieroglyphic inscription on it. And these alfardes actually are at about a 45-degree angle. And when the rubble was taken off and exposed, they quickly are directly exposed to light and rain and erosion. And as far as I know, Waldeck is the only ones to have drawn these in situ so accurately. We've got some other great insights here. You can see here on the left, this is the alfarde today, and you can see it's horribly eroded. On the right is Waldeck's drawing. You can see that the captive is wearing a netted skirt. But what's really important here is this day sign cartouche that's sort of emblazoned on its stomach. If you look back here, let me go back one, you can see that both of the captives that are looking inward on the stairway both have these day sign cartouches on their bellies. So with the number 7, and this most likely relates to a date that is near the capture of these captives, along with their fellow captives, all along the basement of depicted on the basement of House C here. So we have a day sign cartouche relating to the capture and the display of these captives, probably right there in the court, right? And disposed of right there at the top of the staircase itself. There's also other really nice related iconography that's talking about their very high status. You can see how richly adorned they are. Most likely this relates directly to the hieroglyphic inscription inscribed on the center of the stairway there. Again, another great win for Waldeck and a wonderful validation. The 7 Chewin date is a wonderful validation on the accuracy of Waldeck's sketch here. Now, again, I want to return back to the Temple of the Sun. So one of the last insights that we're going to talk about here, because really this is the temple that Waldeck drew when he lived on site. He was only a couple of yards away from it. He got up every morning and he'd draw what he saw, and his resulting drawings and lithographs of the sanctuary panels and the jambs are extremely good for the time. But yet none of these were ever published, and only a few were published later in the 1860s. So here is his reconstruction on the east facade of the Temple of the Sun here, okay? And when I saw this, I about jumped out of my socks because I recognized something in the upper roof comb that I had never ever seen before. And if you look at the upper roof comb here, he draws it like no one else had ever drawn before or after. Okay, and I was gobsmacked. I was going, no, absolutely no way. But we're left with this real visual enigma here because Waldeck has his interpretation of the upper roof comb, right? But it is not followed, generally not followed by later artists. Okay, so what's going on here with this upper roof comb? Let's take a closer look at it in detail. Here is Merle Green's drawing of that upper roof comb, that it's actually taken as the gospel truth, right? So we're left with quite a dilemma here. Is who are we to believe? Are we to believe Merle or are we to believe Waldeck, who drew it literally 150 years earlier. Okay, well, let's take a closer look and see if we can find out who has the truer line here. Now, when Merle Green drew, let's go back and look at Merle's here. Merle Green has a seated figure with a serpent bar. Out of the heads of the serpent bar are godlike heads, and then she has this winding serpent, going through to the left and right, with these two standing figures who seemed sort of to be lifting the star bands apart from one another. Okay, so when Merle drew this, she knew that on the west side of the opposite side of the Temple of the Sun, there is remnants of a very clear seated figure inside basically an ancestor cartouche. And there was also remnants of this of a similar figure on the Temple of the Sun. So what she assumed, what I can make of it, is she assumed that, well, if there's one on the west side and there's remnants of a similar one on the other temples, it's probably just the same repeated motif on the east side. Okay, so when we actually take a look at what Waldeck drew, what we see here is in the center is the actual remnants of a sacred Sabbath tree or a Maya cross. On the very top, you have a trilobed blossom. Right below the trilobed blossom, you have the remnants of a jeweled draped serpent. And then down on the trunk of the tree, you have a very, very prominent stingray spine. And as many of you know from my previous talk on interpreting the Maya cross, what we have here of all the elements of one of the Maya sacred trees of the East. All right, the stingray spine, the draped serpent, and the trilobed blossom up top. Did he make all this up? His only reference would have been the Temple of the Cross, right? That's the only other image of the Maya cross. Maybe he didn't make it up, but what if he drew these elements correctly in situ? Next, what we have is he drew two Bacab-like figures, two Atlas-like figures who hold up the star, sky from Earth, or hold apart star bands. And then on the left and right, you have cartouches, basically ancestor cartouches with deified ancestors or gods. These are very, very common. We see these at other sites, usually deified mother and father to the left and the right, respectively. And then these Bacabs are kind of lifting up a sort of terraced platform, right? And then right below, we have elements of a star band below, okay? So if Waldeck actually drew these elements correctly, they convey nothing less than the raising of a bejeweled eastern tree during a primordial separation of earth and sky, a cosmogonic act that complements the events of the day of creation, or Era Day, cited in the three temples of the cross group, okay? So let's take a little bit, and of course, all of these elements from the Bacabs, from the trees, and the ancestor cartouches, these are all very, very well known and recognized other sites, recognized parts of Maya iconography. They're kind of like the standard stock and trade. So again, here's just a closer examination of comparing those elements side by side between the cross motif on the Temple of the Cross and the same elements here found on the central axis of the Temple of the Sun. We know the name of this tree. It was actually called the resplendent jeweled tree. Okay, and so it would just be fantastic if this is true. Here are evidence of those ancestor cartouches. Again, I showed you some of these ancestor cartouches at the beginning of the presentation in the House A as part of this line medallions along the walls of House A. Okay, here is actually Catherwood's drawing. Catherwood, basically Stebbins and Catherwood's only spent like less than 2 weeks at the site. I mean, Waldeck is spending over a year at the site. Okay, so in Waldeck, right before he leaves, he has malaria. It's pouring down rain. He pulls out his sketchbook and he makes this very quick sketch of the upper roof comb. And you can see here to the left, it seems like we have again a seated portrait of an ancestor surrounded by a cartouche. He also draws a little bit of element of the star band below, and maybe not, some measure of elements of that central icon. Okay, so as you start to look at the earliest photos, as well as photos taken by Maudsley, and I'm always looking for more photos, it becomes clearer and clearer and clearer that the elements that Waldeck drew are actually become more and more secure. And let me show you that the real identification comes here in photographs that Merle Green had actually made and are published in her wonderful books, The Sculpture of Palenque. And let's just take a look at her photograph here and see if we can recognize any of these elements. And sure enough, as you begin to study very, very closely the existing stuccos that survived all the way into the 1970s and 80s, you can see elements of the ancestor cartouche, the seated figure in the center. You see the star band below. And you also see this Bacab, who is looking toward the outer edge, and you can see his one arm with his bejeweled bracelet here lifting up the band above him. And we can actually, once you see it, you can see it a lot clearer. In the Maudsley photo, you can actually see the thigh. It's broken off here in the green photo, but you can actually see the thigh and part of the leg of the Bacab below. So this is definitely his position. It's not the position that Merle drew of this standing figure. You see very, very clearly the ancestor cartouche, and over here in the upper right, you actually see the serpent. You see elements of the serpent eye and jaws coming out of the corner. You can see the right torso and arm. So more and more, Waldeck, we can validate all of these parallel elements within the Waldeck drawing. Okay, and really this is really the thing that brings it home, is that below here I have a drawing made by Paul Johnson of this ancestor cartouche, and you can see very, very clearly that it is an ancestor cartouche that's very, very similar to other ancestor cartouches that are found at Palenque, especially in House E. There's actually a giant ancestor cartouche. It's still existent on that wall just below the painted text of House E. Zahler actually drew this ancestor cartouche when he visited there in 1911. But you can see here that the notches in the center and at the bottom, it's very, very similar to the notches of this ancestor cartouche and the serpent heads emanating from the corners that is pre-existent in the iconography in House E. So in the final analysis, and I hope it's not the final analysis, what I've bracketed here in red, these are all the elements that can be verified in the Waldeck drawing. And the only thing that we can't verify are elements of the tree, because by about, I'd say about 1900, between 1920, the center element had begun to deteriorate and break away. But I'm still hopeful. There are photographs that possibly could indicate remnants of this stingray spine at the base of the cross. So you never know. I'm always looking for these more photographs to see if we can verify that central icon of that tree, primordial tree in the east, right? So, so the Waldeck's drawings show how early sketches, however simple or imaginary, can help restore key iconographic elements and support reading of hieroglyphs. After nearly 200 years, several of Waldeck's drawings of the Palenque sculptures pose a direct challenge to modern reconstructions of the same monuments, a controversy that no doubt welcomed by the very flamboyant Waldeck, one of the earliest explorers and promoters of classic Maya art. So I just want to, again, give many thanks to all the support we've had in the past few years on this research. Top of the list, of course, is Jim Reed and Michael Ruggieri of the Aztlander for giving us the space and the place to present these this new research. So thank you very much. I'm going to now pass this over to Danielle, who is going to talk about a really exciting aspect of Waldeck's work later in his life, post expedition, when he is examining the writing systems of the ancient Mexica and the ancient Maya. Okay, so let me stop share.
All righty, Carl.
And
really?
yeah, and again, that just gives you just a tiny example, I mean, of what we've discovered here, and it just gives you a sense of just the richness of this archive that can no longer be ignored.
And Arthur Dunkelman says, thank you, Carl and company, for your superb work.
Oh, thank you.
Of Waldeck, a fitting acknowledgement of his work and his memory.
Thank you. That's very kind.
But
sure.
Are you guys considering maybe creating a book with all this information?
Yeah, we have. As we mentioned in our article, so there was so much data here. I mean, remember, Waldeck is 8 years in Mexico, and he's drawing both. He had visions for drawing like a book on colonial fashions, and then a book on architecture, and then of course a book on Palenque and whatnot. So he has chapters and elements from all of these proposed works that he envisioned, but he never got off the ground. So what we did is we opened up. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of drawings, and I think we're up to almost 700-800 pages of translation of the diaries. We opened that up to a wider range of scholars, and we had last year in November we had a huge conference on the Waldeck data from art historians, archaeologists, linguists. Another thing that Waldeck did is he was a polyglot. Okay, he spoke German, he sung in Italian, probably made love in Italian as well, because he was very involved with the opera wherever he went. Opera in Mexico, opera in London when he lived there as well. And of course, he spoke French and he spoke Spanish, and he chastises Steffens and Catherwood that they did not speak Spanish. So they were really missing out on, local narratives and about the ruins, which he also includes. So being a polyglot, he set to begin creating a series of word lists of Nahuatl, of Chol, of Tzotzil, so he has, and the Chol, of course, we know, is the mother tongue of the inscriptions, and we have very, very, very few to none source grammars and dictionaries for that, colonial source grammars or dictionaries. So we took his Chol word list, with his definitions, and a wonderful linguist from UNAM, Cedric Bezi, he did brilliant analysis on that vocabulary list of Chol. So he was one of many, many scholars. Another great scholar, and of course, Johann would have alluded to this if he could have given his introductory lecture. But we had another scholar, and she analyzes Waldeck as he envisioned himself as this artist explorer. You know, of course, his ego was bigger and larger than life, and so you can see how he actually, you know, puts himself in the center of these portraits and narratives. We didn't show all of them, where he's this grand adventurer and daring dude, you know, and he's sort of the center of. He's almost like an Indiana Jones character that he's promoting his explorations, you know, and seeing himself in a very romantic role as artist explorer. And also a wonderful French scholar came in and analyzed all the sketches, colonial sketches that of fashion and architecture and food and rituals and things like that Waldeck was recording. The choices he made are very similar to previous artists who visited Mexico, and he knew what was hot and what would sell. So, you know, he would have the water carrier, and he would have the tortilla maker, and the soldier, and the foot soldier, and things like that. Peter Mathews came in. Wow. Peter Mathews came in and contributed a beautiful analysis. We didn't show those, but Waldeck, while Waldeck was in the Palenque village, there was a festival, a carnival, and the Maya came in. I showed you a few of those musicians, but along with those musicians came in this whole pageantry of Maya painted and dressed as combating jaguars. And so they would, and in this rite that is sort of in tune with the Catholic Carnival and probably the agricultural cycle, you have these combating jaguar warriors who just beat the crap out of each other, right? In a great sort of ritual display. And this is a ritual that's still practiced in Chiapas today. And we also have evidence in the classic inscriptions. So it's absolutely, I mean, so he was, Peter wrote this article as Waldeck as ethnographer. And he does these absolutely gorgeous watercolors. I could possibly show you some of those watercolors of this carnival and Maya ritual of jaguar fighting jaguars. So so that's what we've done. We've opened up the entire archive. We've shared it with a larger group of scholars, and we had this wonderful conference down in Unam in November, and we have just submitted, and it was accepted for publication. We have over, how many papers, Danielle? We have over 20 articles.
I see over 20. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from all multi perspectives of art and history, linguistics, archaeology, and the role of the artist in early 19th century, and so it's been where again it's been a really exciting collaboration, but we need more eyes. We need more eyes and more ears, because what we've seen is only a fraction of what others will be able to see, and the new questions that they'll be able to bring to this data. And after almost 200 years of lying in obscurity, you know, old Waldeck is finally having his due, and rightly so. Because, like I said, you cannot discount even the most rudimentary drawings, because the things that they drew quickly just either were stolen or were looted, or they were eroded. So it really is a precious archive of first impressions, you know, on one of the most magnificent sites in all the Maya world. So yeah, so there's much more to be analyzed and looked at, and you know, there'll be more articles, and as far as that the conference proceedings, that's being published as a book, and as soon as Daniel fixes all of our bad Spanish, because it's in Spanish.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Palenque is one of my favorite places, and I've had some excellent experiences there over the decades. Some of them involved mushrooms, but I could see the way the Maya artists saw their world, and that,
Yeah, so there's this organic flowing line, and you know, one thing that Waldeck talked about is when he first came to the site, he said, I just couldn't understand the iconography. It was like nothing he had ever seen or experienced, and he said he had to walk the site for weeks with a sketch pad and just keep sketching and sketching and sketching so he could get in tune with the aesthetic of the line and the character. So he did that quite well with the architecture and the art. Not so well, of course, with the hieroglyphs. And even if you go there today and you look at the hieroglyphic panels of the sanctuaries, let's say in the Triad group, or even the oval tablet, it's really hard to see the glyphs. You know, they're just all white and bleached and kind of covered over in scum and grime, and you really can't. It's really, really hard to actually read the glyphic blocks, because you need the exact optimum, you know, lighting conditions, raking light, and you also have to be able to clean the monument. The diaries are fantastic because when he does talk about the monuments and discoveries, which Johann will allude to, I don't want to steal his thunder, but he makes some really, really interesting discoveries. Like he's on top of the Temple of the Inscriptions and he's looking at the floor, and he can see that, good God, you know, there are potentially tombs underneath this floor, and he's absolutely right, you know. One of the things that, well, anyways, that we have much more to share in that sort of vein in the future, and we hope that it will hopefully produce more insights and discovery. One of the really, really important things is when Waldeck is in Mexico, he was allowed to buy Maya artifacts, Aztec manuscripts and Maya manuscripts, anything. I mean, they were up for sale by other antiquarians. Even the museum itself was selling items to the highest bidder. So Waldeck actually, as part of his collection, was a collection of Mexica and Maya artifacts, which he bought. And many of those which he bought are the ones that he's actually drawing.
right.
Well, we've been able to trace when Waldeck left Mexico, he was just absolutely dirt poor. He had to sell that collection. Okay, so he sold that collection, and then that collection was actually taken to Europe. So what's really, really exciting is that in many of those artifact assemblages that I was showing you, especially the Aztec artifacts, we have found several of those in collections in Europe, and so which have never really come to light, you know. So we have Waldeck's rendering and other artists from Mexico City like Nebel. We have their renderings of these artifacts, and we can actually show now and document the transmission from Waldeck to others in Mexico onto, and how they get accessed and sold to Europeans. So that's another whole, but of course that's a huge can of worms, right? Huge can of worms there. So these negotiations are ongoing and sort of very delicate, and so but it's great that again by by tracing Waldeck's route and where he drew it and when he drew it, we can trace the provenance, potential provenance of a lot of these smaller, more portable artifacts. You know, that's another incredibly exciting dynamic of this research, right? And of course, as you well know, once an artifact is taken off site, you lose the context, you lose the provenance, and you lose so much of its meaning and its purpose. So we hope by publishing this new line of papers and investigations, and also by publishing, just one of the things that we would like to do is just like publish a catalog and call it the Waldeck Bodega. All those little artifacts, all those bits and pieces that he gathered and into his house there, right? And that he drew, that was a bodega. It was like the first Palenque museum. Right. And it's just shocking that none of that has ever been widely published or analyzed. And again, I gave you an example of just a few pieces that we can actually place back into inscriptions in stucco, you know. And so there's, but of course, he's bombastic, he's a raconteur, he's larger than life, and his imagination keeps filling in the missing details, you know. So we always have to very carefully analyze and segregate his drawings, you know, and look at them for, you know, what is true, what is imaginative reconstruction. Because just like all of us, he has huge biases, and one of his huge biases is he wanted to prove that the ancient Hindus had once made contact potentially, right? Or other ancient peoples, right? And again, the hard evidence were the elephant bones, right? So much more to talk and discuss and explore here.
I particularly like the one image you showed where there were the portraitures on the wall as you're looking through the Palacio to the courtyard, but there was a iguana battling with a snake.
Yeah. So, well, let me if you let me share my screen, I'll go to that. And this is Waldeck is on the very beginning of an art style called Orientalism, right? He's exoticizing, you know, the he's exoticizing and romanticizing the ancient Maya, and so what he'll do is, of course, he's drawing figures of clantily dressed nude natives. Let's see, and let me go to that photo that you and also he did a reconstruction of the temple at Tenochtitlan, with in the center of the plaza is the stone of Tizoc, with two gladiatorial Aztec warriors duking it out, you know, and the whole backdrop is like an operatic stage. So one of the things that Waldeck was employed when he lived in London as well as in Mexico is he built opera stages and backdrops. So he takes this theater experience, theater art and design, and he's applying it to you know, the exotic flavor of both the Aztec and Maya temples. So here, I think I just put it up here. Here he has an iguana wrestling with what looks to be a constrictor or a viper, correct? There at the door of the temple. And this is another aspect, this Orientalism and mythologizing of the temple architecture is another element. He'll bring in elements of ancient Greek mythology, or ancient Greek theater into the landscape of Palenque by promoting workmen and also his servants as aspects of certain Greek heroes and heroines, right? And one of them is Theseus and the Minotaur, with Ariadne giving Theseus the clue. The clue literally means the thread, to help guide him in and guide him out of the labyrinth, right? So he kind of sets up this artificial, he kind of stages this scene with his workers to make it echo like a pivotal moment in the play of Theseus, Ariadne, and the Minotaur, right?
The image of the person also is very Da Vinci-esque.
Yes. So this is his classical training. He was a classical artist, right? A neoclassical artist. So you can see here in the proportions and the pose, the contrapposto pose. This is very much from Greek and Roman sculpture, right? Where all the weight of the body is shifted onto one leg. That's the contrapposto pose. So that's all neoclassical accents there. And you can see here that this is possibly the mask of G1, because it has the upturned curls. I believe G1 has the upturned curls in the eyes, right? But it's just an absolute crying shame that if he did draw this stucco mask, and it's a very large stucco mask, that it didn't survive, and these are the only evidence of its existence, right? So also what he's doing here, of course, today there is no more portraiture. There is no profile portraits within these ancestor cartouches. There's only the lower shoulders and some of the jewelry. So it's nice to see here that, he's seen evidence. Also, this is all graffiti there in the hallway there of the door. These are all previous explorers who have come and made their mark. And he said every single person who was visiting the ruins, whether they're local or they're from far afield, they're all taking a piece of the ruins back with them. And it just shows you the immense vulnerability of the art and the sculpture. Everybody wanted a memento, right? And of course, there was this huge race to document as much as he possibly could before it was all looted and taken away. And since he was really the first great defender, Trujillo points this out, he's really the first great defender of the city itself, and trying to conserve the art here and for posterity. And for that, he should be really lauded and given credit for, But of course, it made him tremendous enemies, and got him into a whole heck of a lot of trouble. Enough trouble to actually his opposition garnered forces to arrest him and to possess all of his drawings and artifacts that he had collected. He fortunately, just days before Santa Anna and his goons came in, he escaped. He broke his leg in the process. He escaped to Campeche, and then he would go to the Yucatan, and then where they would finally catch up with him, right? But by then he had made copies. He had made copies of all of his drawings and everything, right? And we actually have that list of things that they took from him, right? but he boasts in his diaries. He says, they're never going to get the real goods, because I just gave him all the copies. So, and so again, he's there in Mexico for 8 years. He's absolutely fascinated. What makes him different from all of his contemporaries is he is drawing everything. He has access, and he's drawing anything and everything that interests him. So we know that there are more Waldeck drawings out there. They just haven't been identified. I think 2 recent drawings of 2 ballerinas, sort of opera theater ballerinas, were found in London. And so we're very hopeful as we get this information out, more and more of Waldeck's drawings, as well as his diaries and his papers and his letters, can be noted, found, and cataloged. Again, and pertaining to provenance of objects and lost architecture and sculpture, and hopefully a few lost inscriptions in there as well.
Alex Krim is the only one with any questions, and I think he spent some time in Palenque. But just like the book idea, has Waldeck's art been uploaded to any database in a similar fashion to the Kerr rollouts or the Sheely drawings?
Okay, so there are 2 main archives, the digital archives that are online. So thank you for that question. One is in the Newberry. That is accessible to the whole public. Those links are a little bit hard to find. If you email us, we can give you those links directly. The other is, of course, the other bulk of the Waldeck material are in the Bibliothèque nationale in Paris, France. Some of that, I believe, is online. A lot of it isn't. So those are the 2 main digital archives. At the Newberry, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the Newberry, they also have transitioned digital archives over to old archives and more new and improved accessible archives. And there were sort of documents and drawings and things that were kind of in a digital limbo, that only until we went there and we really, really looked, and we asked several archivists, we found a whole nother cache of letters and documents, right? That were just kind of floating in a sort of a digital limbo that hadn't quite made that transition yet. Or if it did make the transition, the old digital links were better than the new digital links, that sort of thing, right? So, but the Newberry has done a wonderful job on posting all of the documents and the journals. You can look at his operatic sets, you can look at his theater productions, all of this sort of thing as well. Most of that is posted online, and but there's no context. It's just like Waldeck box number 7, and then just gives you, there's no context at all, right? There's been a little bit of archival research, but no nerds like us who understand Palenque iconography and Maya inscriptions and Aztec Mexica inscriptions as well. Nobody has done a really deep dive into the art and iconography. Remember, this is the same archive that has the Popol Vuh. I mean, we spent 30 minutes with the Popol Vuh. It was one of the most sacred moments and viewings of my life. They have Avendaño's manuscript. Avendaño's manuscript, who Avendaño is the one who went down into the Petén and had this major confrontation with the last Itza king on Tayasal, right? And convince him to lay down arms and submit to Spanish rule. They have that letter. And not only do they have that, they have tens of thousands. Ayer, who is a major bibliophile and a bibliomaniac of the late 19th and early 20th century, he went down to Mexico and he just bought hordes and hordes and hordes of original documents, codices, chalambalams, and so while I was there, I was actually cataloging and looking through all of these facsimiles and some of the original documents from Yucatan and all over the Maya world, and it's just sitting there in the vaults. And what's really great with the Newberry is they are a public, they're private, but they have a public mission to allow researchers. If you're off the street, you can walk in, you get your library card, you have a short orientation, and you're off to the races.
Wow.
You go to the reading room, and they will bring you these ancient manuscripts and these facsimiles. So there's so much there to view, and I really look forward on going back and diving into. I need at least a year just to survey everything that they have. So all source documents on Native American languages, Maya languages, Aztec language. I mean, it's just absolutely extraordinary what they have on record there, and a lot of surprises. So, yeah, again, a great library, great Chicago, great city, and I would recommend any and all to look at the Newberry website and apply for a fellowship. There's short time fellowships of a month, and also longer ones of 6 months. Incredibly generous staff, incredibly kind, and incredibly accessible.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, we're kind of running late on time. We're losing.
Yeah, I know.
Quickly, and Alex does have another question.
Sure.
But I'll put you two in contact.
Oh, sure. Thanks, Alex.
And I just want to thank you and Danielle for an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Don't forget about Johann. Hopefully he can still give his introductory presentation that can be added to these two talks. And we can
get an email from him, and we can put forth that idea. I think this same link will work at another time. Anytime.
Okay.
It's good for me.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
All right.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Danielle.
Hey, and thank everybody for going the distance there. And again,
Yes,
we hope that we introduced you to a whole new study and archival research here.
And excellent PowerPoints, guys.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for watching this Aztlander presentation. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. To subscribe to free monthly issues of the Aztlander Magazine of the Americas, contact your host, Jim Reed, at jimreedmaya@gmail.com. Thanks again.